Hey everybody, this is Ryan.
And this is Kyle.
And you're listening to
The Doctor's Watcher, the Outlander fans podcast about every episode of Doctor Who.
Nice. Yep, I've kind of been thinking of this series as like or rather thinking of Outlander as fanfic based on this series.
Yeah, I've actually never actually seen or read any of Outlander, but I definitely have friends who have, so I'm like fairly familiar with like the basic idea at least.
Yeah, cool. The books are freaking ginormous. I've never actually read those, but they are thick as hell. My partner actually said she was, traveling somewhere one time, and she had one of the books in her backpack, and security actually had to like take it out and check it because it's so thick. Like it sets off their sensors or whatever, and they can't like X-ray through it properly or something.
Nice.
Like they were like, oh, yep, we get this a lot with Outlander books because they're just so thick. It's like, dang, I didn't know that was a thing, but
yeah, me
impressive.
I think Mom was a fan of Outlander, wasn't she? Isn't she?
Yeah, she is. I don't know, like if she's, caught up current on it, but yeah, I know she at least was. Yeah.
Nice.
So how's it going?
I'm doing all right. I have actually just finished, speaking of books and shows and stuff, I've just finished reading the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, which was really interesting.
Oh, cool.
It's sort of like, it's like kind of post-apocalyptic, but it's like post-apocalyptic, because sort of apocalypses keep happening, every few to several hundred years. And yeah, they call them like a fifth season when some sort of like apocalyptic event happens. So, sometimes it might be just like a giant volcano or like, a several year famine or, different things like that. And at the start of the first book in the trilogy, basically like one of the continents of the planet like cracks open essentially. And, that obviously triggers a fifth season. So the world kind of like shifts into like apocalypse mode essentially. And there's also like fantasy elements and like, sort of magic adjacent stuff. And yeah, it's the story of like, kind of how this woman deals with stuff. And like, yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, that sounds cool. So Broken Earth trilogy, you said it was called?
Yeah. Yeah. The first book is the fifth season.
Cool. Well, yeah, that does sound interesting. Like, I guess that's kind of a fun take on the post-apocalypse thing. Instead of just being like, what if there was an apocalypse? Kind of like, what if they just didn't quit happening? It was over and over. Nice.
And yeah, it's set like thousands of years into like these apocalypses happening every so often. So yeah, they kind of, have all their weird like societal stuff for like how to deal with it and everything, and how their little communities are organized and all that. And yeah, it's really interesting.
Nice. That sounds cool. Well, I'm still reading and watching the same stuff. I think we've already talked about Severance. So fucking good.
Nice.
I don't want to go on about that because I'll probably rapidly get into spoilers and and stuff, but just highly recommend it. I'm still reading the Drizzt books. There's tons and tons of those. I think I'm on number like in the high 20s, 27 or 28, something like that.
Nice.
They're very entertaining. I mean, you know, nothing like earth-shattering or anything. Every few Dritz books, I, you know, take a break and read something actually legit. Not that they're not legit, but it's just, you know, there's very shallow, pretty much. Like, it's very easy type stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Like, for example, before this book, I read one called Two Cheers for Anarchy. Who was the guy's, John Scott or Scott something? I forget the author now. I want to say John Scott, but that sounds not right saying it out loud. But anyway, that was a good one.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Well, shall we get back around to Doctor Who and the Highlanders?
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome.
Let's see the dangler from last time. Oh yes. So the Doctor and Paul and Jamie from Outlander and his dad were
Ben and Jamie, you mean?
Or yeah, Ben. Whoops. Yeah, they were getting ready they were on that slave ship, getting ready to get shipped out to the Caribbean. And then Polly was wait a second. Polly was like on shore. I think she was like hanging out in that town, Inverness, if I recall.
Uh-huh.
But now that I say that, I think the Doctor was there too, because he was like hiding in the kitchen, right?
Yeah, the Doctor was disguised as the old woman.
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah. So, yeah. This episode starts off with the folks in the hold of the ship, Ben and Jamie. And actually, it turns out that the old man's not Jamie's dad. I didn't really realize that until some of the dialogue in this scene, but I guess he is Kirsty's dad, and I had just kind of assumed that they were all a family, but I guess he and Jamie were just co-Highlander soldiers or whatever.
Okay. Perhaps before we get too far into it, I skipped over how'd you watch it.
Indeed. Yeah, so I'm still watching the loose cannon reconstructions of this one. I again found the version that has the reconstruction audio plus some narration, but I didn't really like that, so I'm just watching the regular loose cannon reconstruction.
Cool.
Yeah, I usually watch them on a particular account on a particular website that has them, but for whatever reason they don't have this one, so I'm watching it on some other one, and there are the website has inserted ads or commercial breaks or whatever into the episode, and they're just at completely random times, might even be mid dialogue and whatever.
Damn, that is some YouTube ass bullshit. Jeez, how annoying. uBlock Origin, if you haven't checked it out already. Works pretty good.
Yeah, I should. So we start out in the hold of the ship with Ben and Jamie and Colin, who's the old man. And the other prisoners, the other Highlanders, also in the hold of the ship, are getting ready to start beating Ben up because he's English rather than Scottish. So, they think that he might be like an English spy or whatever. Mm-hmm. But Colin stops them and like explains to them how Ben helped him escape and everything. And, he's a friend and whatnot. And luckily for Ben, the other prisoners all seem to like know and respect Colin. So they leave Ben alone.
Oh, well, now, I crave your pardon. A friend of the McLarens is a friend of mine.
Ugh, aye.
Matilda, don't scratch the carpet. Hey. It turns out that the actual former captain of the ship is here in the hold as a prisoner. And he explains that the current captain of the ship, Trask, used to be like his first mate, basically, when he was running weapons from France past the blockade. But then Trask apparently betrayed him and is now sailing the ship for King George.
What a jerk.
Yeah, seriously. Ben points out that they're not being treated as prisoners of war. And so, like, maybe Trask is not actually working for King George. Maybe he's kind of like doing a side hustle, essentially.
Look, mate, he is going to sell us like the stinking fish he thinks we are. Slave labour. That's what we're going to be, slave labour.
Well, that sucks.
Uh-huh. Meanwhile, back on shore, Polly is hiding out in a barn. And a few moments later, Kirsty shows up. Kirsty, obviously the actual daughter of Colin.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirsty has like some period clothing for the two of them. And she has like a couple of trays and a bunch of oranges. Apparently, Polly has come up with a plan that involves the two of them pretending to be orange sellers, because I guess that's a way that they can like get close to the English soldiers and like maybe learn where Jamie and Ben and Colin were taken to.
Nice.
So Kirsty is not really sure about Polly's plan. Kirsty kind of seems not really sure about everything. And she's worried about getting caught and whatever, but Polly reminds her that they have a friend in the English army.
Algernon for Finch. Always assuming he's got out of that terrible pit.
So back in town at the inn, the doctor is still in the old woman disguise, and he's kind of just puttering around the inn's common room. And Finch comes in and orders a glass of wine, and a few minutes later, a soldier shows up with Kirsty and Polly and like bring them over to talk to Finch. And the soldier's like, these two wenches that we picked up seem kind of like the ones that we were searching for the other day. And Polly's like,
What a nasty man. Tell him we're not, Algy dear.
Oh, just a minute.
So she and Kirsty are basically just like kind of hanging off of Finch, and Kirsty is saying that they're like old friends and whatever, and the soldier's like, yeah, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And
friends.
uh-huh. So he leaves Finch alone with them, and they basically start asking Finch about where the doctor and Ben and Jamie and Colin are, but he says that he doesn't know. He's only in charge of like capturing the prisoners, and they need to talk to Solicitor Gray, who's in charge of like actually administrating the prisoners or whatever. So he leaves, and old woman doctor starts coming over to the table to try to get Polly and Kirsty's attention. But Solicitor Gray's clerk Perkins shows up, and he starts talking to Paul Stee. But we cut away before this conversation really continues.
Interesting.
Back in the hold of the ship, Trask brings Solicitor Gray down to all the prisoners, all the Highlanders, and Gray announces to them that King George is offering them clemency if they'll testify for him. And, of course, they're like, that's treason, so, obviously they're not going to do it. They're all going to hang until Trask is like, there's another alternative. You can sign 7-year labor contracts for plantations in the West Indies.
Jeez.
And
I'll need be doing that.
Uh-huh.
Probably some of them said.
The former captain of the ship, Willie, I think was his name, he's like, fuck that. Those plantations fucking suck.
Right.
He says that, nobody there would even survive the 7 years of labor in the contract. And it's better to die a quick, honorable death hanging than like a slow one being worked to death as a slave, basically.
Seriously. Tend to agree with that.
Yeah. Solicitor Gray is like, the dude, this dude's going to hang, but I'm offering all of you life. And he basically tells them to either come over to his side of the room to sign the contract or stay on the other side of the room to hang. And everyone actually goes over and signs, other than Ben and Jamie and Colin and ship captain Willie.
Did they say, we're just going to hang over here?
Uh-huh.
We're going to hang back.
Ben's like, hang on a sec. He's like, actually, maybe I will sign the contract, but can I read it first? And, Gray's like, of course, like, sure, go ahead and read the contract. So he starts reading it and then uses the opportunity to rip it up.
Nice.
Uh-huh. It's a nice symbol. It looks great, but it ends up being kind of meaningless because they just like knock him unconscious and like drag him off to be apparently locked up and prepared to get hung. And then Gray heads off to go prepare a new contract for everyone to sign.
Yeah, that's the trouble with eating or ripping contracts, is usually there's just like another one available.
Yeah, I guess Gray doesn't have it like just readily available. He has to like go prepare it, but
right. Well, back in the day, they had to like handwrite that shit.
Yeah. But yeah, it is kind of just like delaying the inevitable at this point.
Right.
Hey folks, and welcome to the mid-roll. This is the part of the podcast where I ask you if you're enjoying what you're hearing, and if so, I suggest that you might tell your friends and you might leave us a nice rating and review on the podcast rating and review site of your choice. That's all I've got for you here, and now back to the show. Back at the inn, Paul Stee has been, sitting with Clerk Perkins, waiting for Gray to show up so they can talk to him. But Polly and Kirsty are getting ready to leave because Gray hasn't shown up yet. They don't really think he's coming. But Perkins, really wants them to stick around and keep him company. He's, kind of bordering on sexual harassment. And ends up like threatening to basically call the cops on them if they leave. He's going to like turn them into the English soldiers or whatever. So they end up staying, and he pulls out a deck of cards to start a game of whist or whatever. The old woman doctor pops by the table, remarking that, like, you need 4 people to play whist. So Perkins, like, tries to get rid of old woman until the doctor switches from his old woman voice to his fake German accent and pulls a gun on Perkins.
Oh, but he's still in the old woman outfit?
Uh-huh.
Nice. I guess that would be a little startling.
Yeah. Solicitor Gray actually does show up at this point, and he tells Perkins basically to go prepare some new contracts. And Polly is about to start questioning Gray. You know, she and Kirsty have been waiting for him, but the doctor kind of like catches her eye and like, you know, gives her a look that stops her. So Gray leaves. You know, he's given the order to Perkins to go prepare contracts, and then he leaves. Perkins is still like hanging around for a minute, and the doctor, you know, basically uses his intimidation check success to continue intimidating Perkins, and gets Perkins to agree to let the doctor and Polly and Kirsty all leave, and then he himself is going to wait 10 more minutes before leaving, and then they go.
Nice.
So they head back to the barn. There's a little bit of joking once they get back to the barn about the doctor, like, wearing these old woman clothing, basically.
You know, those dresses really do suit you, Doctor.
Oh, you saucy girl.
There's very of a Jamal, Granny McClown.
You're wonderful, Doctor.
I know.
Nice.
Uh-huh.
I bet he did look pretty cute in those.
Yeah, totally. He goes to lay down, and, you know, it's nighttime. He wants to go sleep. But Polly's like, no, wait, we need to, like, find everyone and, like, do something and, like, rescue people and shit. And the doctor's like, yeah, they're on the ship, on the Annabelle, and, like, tries to go lay down to go to sleep again, but Polly, like, keeps pressing him about, like, we need to come up with a plan, come on, like, what are we gonna do? So he asks if they have any money, which they do still have quite a bit of, that they stole from Finch. And Kirsty apparently has access to a rowboat. So the doctor says that they need to buy a bunch of weapons from the English soldiers and then smuggle them onto the Annabelle. Polly's like, cool, so what next? And the doctor's like,
Oh, I don't know, we'll think of something. I must get some sleep.
and does actually just lay down and go to sleep.
Nice.
Uh-huh.
Well, we've got our weapon smuggling nailed down, you know. Cool. All right, nap time.
Gray and Perkins have the new contracts all prepared, and they are getting rowed out to the Annabelle, and they arrive at the ship. They hand the contracts over to Trask and, you know, ask him to, like, go get them signed or whatever.
But if anyone tries that trick again of tearing them up, shoot him down immediately.
That almost worked, damn it.
Uh-huh.
Can't have him trying that some more. What if we run out of paper?
It's a pain in the ass to keep rowing back to shore to write up new ones. Trask starts saying that they'll sign in ink or blood. He doesn't care which. But Gray is like, no. These Highlanders have courage and resolution. So basically he says that, like, after they've been sold in Barbados, they can be beat to death for all he cares. But, like, until then, Trask needs to chill.
Flog but one of them. They'll all stand together and refuse to sign a thing. You'll undo everything I've worked for.
Yes. Well, that's what happens when you fuck around with respectable people.
Seriously. He does tell them that, like, they should go ahead and deal with the deserter, which, of course, is Ben. They think he's deserted the English army. Palsty arrives back at the barn. The two of them have been, out trying to buy weapons from the English soldiers, and they've come back with, like, a broken sword and a pitchfork and, like, a couple of knives.
Nice. Better than nothing.
Yeah, so, they probably, rolled, like, a 5 or a 6 or something. Not a 1, but not great.
Right. There's some NPC out there that's like, yes, look at all this money.
A few moments later, though, the doctor arrives back at the barn. He's pushing a wheelbarrow covered with a tarp. And when he removes the tarp, he reveals that this wheelbarrow is basically just, like, full of weapons. He's got swords, pistols, muskets, like, all sorts of things. Kirsty starts reaching for one of them. There's, like, a pistol that's, decorated nicely or something that she wants to look at. And the doctor notices the ring that she's wearing. Polly's like, yeah, that's her dad's fucking ring that she wouldn't give to me to, like, pawn or whatever. And the doctor's like, this is not her dad's ring. So he, basically gets Kirsty to reveal that it's actually the prince's ring, which the prince gave to her dad after her dad saved the prince's life.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's why she was, like, so cautious about it, and, why her dad wants her to, like, protect it with her life or whatever. The doctor is like,
Then it is right and proper that it should now save his life. Give it me.
and, like, she
Weird
does.
phrase. Give it me.
Yeah.
Like, how do you give him to the ring? Anyway.
Yeah, DM's like, roll a persuasion check, and doctor's like, yep, nat 20. So Kirsten's like, oh, all right. I guess I'm giving you my dad's prince ring.
Didn't want to give it away before, but cool. I'm convinced now.
So the doctor adds it to his inventory and starts thinking about using it as bait.
What?
Bait for a very greedy man.
We cut back over to the Annabelle, where Ben has been taken up onto the deck and his arms and legs have been bound, and there's another rope that's, like, tied around his waist, and he's basically hoisted up by the rope around his waist, and they swing him out over the water, and then the hoist rope is, I guess, like, released, and he plunges down into the ocean. And as Trask watches this happen, music plays, and the words on the screen say Doctor Who, Patrick Troughton.
Oh, snap. He's getting water roped.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think they called it ducking at one point in the episode.
I would have said dunking, but I suppose ducking kind of almost makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's kind of crazy. I mean, respect for Ben for not like, giving up or like selling out or kind of wimping out or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
But it sounds pretty sucky for him now.
I guess he was/is in the British Royal Navy, so I don't know, maybe he has training in getting ducked.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, even if he doesn't, it's like, well, you've been in the British Royal Navy, so you have training on how to sit through things that really fucking suck for a long time.
Yeah, that's true at the very least.
Right. Well, good episode. Seems like a lot of kind of putting pieces into position on this one.
Yeah.
Some minor action, but I get the feeling we're probably going to be ramping the action up more and more in the next episode, probably.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. They're kind of like arranging things on the board and getting things all set up. So,
well, cool. That was a good one. I must say, I do enjoy doing the Scottish accent when it works. Sometimes I can't get it to come out, but other times it's a bonny wee accent.
Aye, it is.
Right. Sometimes I'll be doing the Scottish accent and it'll turn into pirate or like the other way around.
Uh-huh. And yeah, and like in this serial, like obviously we have a bunch of Scotsmen and at least one Scotswoman all doing the Scottish accent, but then also like Trask basically does do a pirate accent, so
so that's not confusing at all.
Uh-huh.
Well, cool. That was a good one. Can't wait to find out what happens on the next episode, because on this one, Ben is literally dangling. More of a Ben dangler than a cliff dangler.
Uh-huh. Yeah, like a ship dangler, maybe.
Right. A water dunker, I don't know. Ducker. I mean, if they were ducking him, he'd float on the surface. That's all I'm saying.
That's fair.
Speaking of ducks, do you know how to turn a duck into a soul singer?
No, how do you do that?
You hold him underwater until his was it? Yeah, you hold him underwater until his bill withers.
Nice.
Yeah. Kind of a goofy joke this time around, but Bill Withers kicks ass, so.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Right on.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah, any other notes about this one before we bid the listeners a wee adieu?
No, I didn't have any final notes on this, so yeah, I think we just can do our outro and then find out what happens in our next episode.
Nice. Well, thanks, Kyle, for telling me about this good episode.
Indeed, and thanks, Ryan, for listening to me tell about this episode.
And thanks to Circuit 23, who unfortunately didn't record the theme song in bagpipes. But that is maybe a note I'll take away for next time.
Nice. And thanks to our listeners for listening to us talk about Doctor Who while you go about your daily business or whatever you do while you listen to podcasts.
Listeners, have a bonny wee fortnight.
And tell your mates about the show. That was a pretty bad accent.
Yeah, that was half Scottish, half pirate. Which I'm not even sure if those were halves, but I heard both in there.
Uh-huh.
All right, cool. Well, then I will see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't touch that pen! I know fine what you offer, Mr. Solicitor. I have seen these plantations in the Indies. Not one of you men that signs will live out your 7 years. Better a quick and honourable death at the end of a rope than a long, slow one after months of battle.
Willie McCoy, former master of this vessel. I should have done for him long ago. Later, Trask, later.
Listen to me, all of you. You've heard what Mackay here offers you. Death with honour. What, lingering on the end of a halter? Followed, may I remind you, by quartering and the like courtesies extended to rebels. I offer you life, with a chance to work for your eventual liberty. Liberty? Unless, of course, Mr. Mackay, you would care to turn King's evidence. For the rest of you, for those who wish to sign, over here. For those who wish to hang, over there. Make your choice.